you realize that we talk all the time, life is about choices. And I'm with Mr. Steve Forbes this morning. Mr. Forbes.
It's good to see you.
Let's talk a little bit about life and the choices that people make. And I know probably you're bombarded with financial questions and questions about politics, but I want to ask you about life and how to make good choices and where you start and all that kind of stuff. And I know your background is incredible, and people probably wonder how does he make choices? So, do you have guidelines that you go by when you make choices in life?
Well, in life, some things are beyond your choice,
Yeah.
such as the circumstances in which you're born and things of that sort. But as you grow up, decide what you have a knack for. Everybody has a knack for something, and then figure out how you might make a living at it. Oftentimes it means discovering what you don't like to do before you can find something that you can really get into a groove. And sometimes you aren't master of the universe. Get over it. Everyone has to adjust to circumstances.
That's true.
But within those parameters, you have to have your own inner compass to, as the old saying goes, if you don't know where you're going, every road will get you there. But if you decide to have some desires and ambitions, then it makes choices much easier in terms of how you move or not move.
Now, as far as where we are in America right now, we need choices, and I think a lot of it comes down to taking responsibility for where we're at and what we're doing. Any wisdom there? What can we do as Americans to get us to where we need to be?
Well, I think the key thing is how do we restore the American dream, and that's always been having an economy that is growing, that is creating new things as it destroys old things. We don't use horses to plow fields anymore.
True.
But right now we're in something of a rut, and I think people are, to be blunt, very worried about the binge spending. They don't think that's the way you move forward, going into a lot of debt.
Yeah.
I think people in their own financial sphere are recognizing they're going to get their own indebtedness down. For almost 2 years, for example, credit card debt has been reduced in this country, and people are increasing their savings. Now we got to get the government to do the same thing, and then I think if with a stable dollar, sensible tax code, this country will come back pretty quickly.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Well, government can't do what, or shouldn't do what people shouldn't do, and that is live way beyond your means. Money does not come from Mars or manna from heaven. It comes from what people create, and if you destroy those creations, then we're all going to be the worse off for it.
So when we look at the economy right now, it's hard for people to get beyond that and to see that, man, I can really create something. But there is the possibility of that, even in this economy.
Well, you have to, it's tough, but you have to do two things. One is get through the current storm, but also see and ask yourself, where would you want to be 5 years, 10 years down the road? And even in tough economic times, people are dreaming, planning, doing things. You look at the 1970s, which was a terrible decade economically, terrible inflation, stagnation, higher unemployment than we have today. Mm-hmm. And yet look what was starting to emerge. FedEx, Southwest Airlines, Apple, Microsoft, Sun Microsystems, Oracle, all of these companies were just beginning to get out of the crib. And when you got in a benign environment in the 80s and 90s, they flourished.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're seeing a lot of that kind of creativity here today, where once we get a benign environment again, which we will, in a couple of years, then they'll start to flourish.
Now, just as nitty-gritty stuff, do you sit down and write yourself goals for like the future? Is that something that you do personally, or?
It usually gets etched in the brain pretty quickly.
Yeah.
In terms of immediate things that have to be done, but also in terms of where you want your own business to be going. In the media business, as we all know, that world's been turned absolutely upside down, hit both by the recession and by the web. Well, there are ways to prosper with the web, and we're in the process of doing that now. So in that sense, it's not just 5 years down the road, it's what kind of model, what kind of paradigm is going to exist,
right,
because you haven't had one before.
Wow. Well, I think the future is good for us.
The future is good, uncertain, which creates a little worry and anxiety. And the key thing is we got to be in the forefront of it, because people around the world aren't sitting still, whether it's in Indonesia, India, China, elsewhere. So we can't sit on our duffs any longer either.
That's true.
And that's all the more reason we got to get our financial situation under control, get a tax system that doesn't stand in the way, so we don't spend 7 billion hours a year filling out tax forms, and basic things like that, stable dollar, and then we'll be off to the races again.
Now, you have your book that you wrote about getting rid of the tax system, and you talk about being on a postcard.
Right, the flat tax.
Yeah.
What it would do is take this 10 million word monstrosity, throw it out, and start over, where if you make it, you pay it. It's single rate, generous exemptions for adults and for children. A family of 4, for example, would pay no federal income tax on their first $46,000 of income, only 17% above that, no tax on your savings, and no death taxes. I've always believed you should be able to leave the world unmolested by the IRS.
Right.
And do that on the business side too, so literally you could fill out your tax return on a sheet of paper and not have to worry about all these shoals and traps of the tax code. You do that and you'll see this country take off like a rocket. Now, tax lawyers won't be happy, but the rest of us will.
Who needs happy tax lawyers anyways?
Or IRS agents,
Yeah.
yes.
You got my vote. Well, thank you so much for being
Tim,
with
thank
us.
you. And
And
I think we're in an environment where people are realizing you don't have to be passive, you can be active, and the internet's allowing people to connect and create communities that weren't possible before.
it's a new world.
A good new world.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.